I'm Captain Isabella Rivera, 31, standing in my dress blues at Fort Hood's Ceremony Hall, watching my family fawn over my younger brother Miguel as he pins on his sergeant major rank. My mother's voice carries across the room. At least one of our children could handle military service. The familiar sting of her words barely registers anymore. For 10 years, they've believed I washed out of basic training after 3 days, now working as a mall security guard in Austin. What they don't know is that I've spent the last decade as an intelligence officer in a unit so classified it doesn't officially exist. That while they think I'm checking shopping bags, I've been running assets in conflict zones from Syria to Somalia. That the washout they pity has commendations locked in a Pentagon vault that would make their hero son's record look like a participation trophy. In about 15 minutes, when Lieutenant General Marcus Thompson arrives to speak at this ceremony, my carefully maintained cover is going to be blown in the most spectacular way possible. Because 3 years ago, in a classified operation outside Raqqa, I saved his son's entire unit from an ambush. And he's never forgotten the face of Ghost 7, my call sign in the field. Before I tell you how a decade of lies is about to explode in front of the entire 1st Cavalry Division, drop a comment below. Have you ever served in silence while others took the spotlight? Or kept your achievements hidden from family who'd already written your story? If this resonates with you, please subscribe. Now let me tell you how I went from being the Rivera family failure to revealing a truth that would change everything. Growing up in a military family in El Paso, Texas, was like being raised in a live-fire exercise where the only acceptable target was excellence. My father, Command Sergeant Major Diego Rivera, had served 30 years in the Army, earning enough ribbons to wallpaper our living room. My mother, Elena, was an Army nurse who'd done 3 tours in Afghanistan, saving lives under fire. Military service wasn't just our tradition, it was our religion, our identity, our oxygen. My older sister Carmen followed the prescribed path perfectly. Army ROTC at Texas A&M, commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant, now a major in the Logistics Corps with a chest full of ribbons and a husband who was also career military. My younger brother Miguel enlisted straight out of high school, becoming the kind of NCO that generals remembered by name. The Rivera children were supposed to be a recruiting poster for military excellence. Then there was me. The middle child who asked too many questions, who saw patterns others missed, who spoke Arabic by 13 because languages came to me like breathing. Where my siblings found comfort in military structure, I found questions. Where they saw clear hierarchies, I saw complex systems begging to be understood differently. Isabella thinks too much, I overheard my father tell my mother when I was 15. A good soldier acts. She analyzes everything to death. She's brilliant, my mother defended half-heartedly. Maybe too brilliant for enlisted service. She should go officer route. Officers who overthink get soldiers killed, my father countered. She needs to learn to follow before she can lead. But following had never been my strong suit. Not because I was rebellious, but because I could see 6 different ways to accomplish any mission, and the prescribed way was rarely the best. This fundamental difference would eventually tear our family apart, or at least, that's what they believed. High school in El Paso was a preparation ground for military service. JROTC was mandatory in our house, and I excelled at the academic portions while struggling with what my instructors called excessive independence of thought. I'd redesign tactical exercises, suggest alternative approaches to standard problems, and consistently score highest on strategic planning while failing room inspections because I'd reorganized everything for efficiency rather than regulation. Why is your wall locker arranged like this? Sergeant Martinez asked during one inspection. It's organized by mission priority, Sergeant. Items needed for PT are at shoulder height for quick access, daily uniforms at waist level to prevent wrinkles from reaching, formal uniforms. I didn't ask for your reasoning, Cadet Rivera. I asked why it doesn't match the regulation diagram. Because the regulation diagram was designed for someone 6 inches shorter than me, Sergeant. The push-ups that followed were worth it for the flash of understanding in his eyes, even if he couldn't acknowledge it. Carmen, home from West Point for Christmas, found me reorganizing my study materials by interconnected concepts rather than subject. "You're going to have to conform eventually," she warned. "The Army doesn't care about your better ideas until you have stars on your shoulders." "Maybe I'll find a different way to serve," I said, not knowing how prophetic those words would be. "There is no different way," she insisted. "There's the Army way or the highway." Miguel, 2 years younger but already drinking the military Kool-Aid, was less diplomatic. "You just can't handle discipline," he said during one family dinner. "Some people are built for service. Others aren't." "Define service," I challenged. "Following orders. Protecting your country. Being part of something bigger than yourself." "What if you could serve better by not following orders? What if protecting your country meant doing things that couldn't be acknowledged? What if the something bigger required you to be invisible?" He laughed. "That's spy movie stuff. Real service is visible. Honorable. Recognized." My parents exchanged glances, and I saw my father's jaw tighten. To him, there was only one kind of service, and it wore a uniform proudly. The pressure to enlist intensified during my senior year. College wasn't discussed as an option, it was assumed I'd serve first, then use the GI Bill like my siblings. The only question was which branch and which MOS. My test scores opened every door, but my psychological evaluations consistently flagged me as unsuitable for conventional military structure. "Have you considered intelligence?" my guidance counselor suggested after reviewing my ASVAB scores. "Your language aptitude and analytical skills are off the charts." "The 35 series MOSs are highly competitive," I said, referring to military intelligence positions. "And my father says intelligence soldiers aren't real soldiers." She studied me over her glasses. "What do you think?" "I think there are different ways to protect your country," I said carefully. "Some are visible. Some aren't." That conversation led to another, more discreet meeting. A woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself only as Sarah visited our school, supposedly recruiting for a Defense Department internship program. But her questions were unlike any recruiters I'd encountered. "Tell me about a time you solved a problem by breaking the rules," she said. "Is this a trap?" She smiled. "Everything's a test, Isabella. The question is what kind." I told her about redesigning our JROTC unit's communication protocol during a field exercise, creating a system that cut response time by 60% but violated 17 standard procedures. Did it work? Perfectly. Until they disqualified us for not following regulations. "And if you had to choose between winning within the rules or accomplishing the actual mission?" "Mission first," I said without hesitation. "Rules are tools. When the tool doesn't fit the job, you find a better tool." She made notes. "How many languages do you speak?" "Fluently?" 3. "Functionally?" 5. "Give me 6 months of immersion, and I can add another." "Your family is military." 3 generations. That could be complicated. I understood immediately. They have very specific ideas about service. And if your service couldn't be acknowledged? If they had to believe you'd failed? The question hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. Could I disappoint my family to serve my country? Could I bear their contempt if it meant doing something that mattered? "My family loves their idea of me," I said finally. Maybe it's time they mourned it. Sarah smiled, and I glimpsed the operator beneath the recruiter facade. "Basic training starts in 3 months. You'll last 3 days before washing out for psychological unsuitability. Your family will be notified that you couldn't handle the pressure. The real training begins immediately after." "What kind of training?" "The kind that doesn't exist. For a unit that isn't real. Doing missions that never happened." "And my family?" "Will have to believe you failed. Can you live with that?" I thought about my father's disappointed face, my mother's tears, my siblings' contempt. Then I thought about serving in ways that mattered, even if no one would ever know. Yes, I said. I can. The next 3 months were torture, knowing what was coming. I maintained the facade of preparing for basic training, letting my family's excitement build. My father gifted me his old combat boots. My mother sewed my name tapes herself. Carmen sent advice about surviving BCT. Miguel promised to visit during graduation. 4th generation Rivera serving their country, my father said the night before I left. You'll make us proud, Mija. I'll serve with honor, I said carefully, not lying but not telling the truth either. Just remember, he added, it's okay to struggle. Basic is hard. But Riveras don't quit. The irony cut deep. In 3 days, I'd be branded a quitter. The ultimate Rivera failure. Fort Jackson, South Carolina, was exactly what I'd expected. Shouting drill sergeants, chaotic processing, hundreds of recruits being systematically broken down to be rebuilt. I played my part perfectly, the overwhelmed recruit who couldn't handle the pressure. On day 2, I had a panic attack during PT. On day 3, I broke down during drill and ceremony. The psychiatrist's evaluation was already written before I walked into his office. Cadet Rivera displays inability to adapt to military structure, he read from his notes. Recommend immediate separation for psychological unsuitability. I understand, I said, playing dejected while memorizing every detail of the office for the report I'd write later. This isn't a reflection on your character, he added kindly. Some people just aren't built for military service. Thank you, sir, I managed, choking on fake tears while noting the classified document partially visible on his desk. The call home was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I can't do it, I sobbed to my mother. I'm not strong enough. I'm so sorry. Her silence was deafening. Then, come home, Isabella. We'll figure something out. But I didn't go home. A black SUV picked me up outside Fort Jackson's gates and drove me to a facility that didn't exist on any map. My real training was about to begin. The place everyone called the farm, though it wasn't the CIA's famous training facility, was hidden in the Virginia mountains. No signs, no uniforms, no ranks visible. Just serious people preparing for serious work. Forget everything you think you know about military service, our lead instructor, codenamed Phoenix, told our class of 12. You're not soldiers anymore. You're ghosts. Soldiers get medals and recognition. Ghosts get results. The training was unlike anything in conventional military doctrine. Languages, cultural immersion, technical surveillance, asset recruitment, information warfare. We learned to blend into any environment, to become anyone, to gather intelligence that satellites couldn't capture and algorithms couldn't process. Human intelligence is the oldest form of warfare, Phoenix taught. It's also the most essential. A drone can show you where the enemy is. Only a human can tell you what they're thinking. I excelled in ways I never could have in traditional service. My excessive independence became an asset. My overthinking became strategic planning. My inability to follow orders blindly became the ability to adapt instantly to changing circumstances. But excellence in the shadows came at a price. Every successful training evolution was a reminder of what I'd given up. While my classmates called home with pride about their military progress, I crafted lies about my civilian struggles. I'm working security at a mall in Austin, I told my family 6 months into training. It's not much, but it's steady work. Security? My father's voice dripped disappointment. Like a rent-a-cop? It's honest work, Dad. Honest isn't honorable, Mija. Your brother just made sergeant. Your sister's getting her captain's bars. And you're checking receipts at Macy's? I'm doing my best, I lied, fresh from a week of advanced interrogation resistance training. Your best wasn't good enough for the army, he said coldly. Maybe it's time to accept that and find a different path. Maybe, I agreed, knowing my path led to places he couldn't imagine. The calls home became less frequent. Holiday visits became exercises in endurance. I sat at family dinners while Carmen discussed her deployment to Kuwait and Miguel bragged about his marksmanship scores, contributing nothing but mumbled responses about mall theft statistics I'd memorized from Google. At least she's employed, my mother would say, damning with faint praise. Barely, Carmen would add. Remember when we thought she'd be the smartest Rivera in uniform? Intelligence without courage is just wasted potential, Miguel would conclude, and they'd move on to topics worthy of a military family's attention. I'd channeled every slight into my training. Their disappointment became fuel for excellence they'd never see. When they called me weak, I completed SEER school. When they called me a failure, I qualified as a marksman in 12 weapon systems. When they said I lacked discipline, I learned to maintain cover identities so deep I sometimes forgot my real name. Graduation from the farm wasn't a ceremony, it was a briefing. My first assignment, establish a cover identity in Austin while preparing for deployment to Syria. The mall security job became real, a perfect explanation for irregular hours and sudden absences. Going anywhere interesting, my coworker asked as I requested another week off. Security training conference in Dallas, I lied smoothly. Corporate wants us certified in some new system. In reality, I was deploying to establish a network of assets inside ISIS-controlled territory. My language skills and cultural training let me pass as everything from an aid worker to a refugee to a black market trader. The intelligence I gathered saved lives, prevented attacks, and shaped military operations my family would never know about. But to them, I was still the washout working mall security. The family embarrassment who couldn't hack it in the real military. The weak link in the Rivera warrior tradition. The years blurred together. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. Countries I couldn't admit I'd visited, operations that didn't exist, victories that couldn't be celebrated. I earned commendations that went straight into classified files, developed intelligence networks that prevented massacres, saved American lives in ways that would never make headlines. My cover identity solidified. I actually worked mall security between deployments, maintaining the facade. A small apartment in Austin, a beat-up Honda Civic, thrift store clothes. Everything screamed struggling veteran who couldn't make it. Meanwhile, my operational accounts held hazard pay I couldn't spend, and my real achievements accumulated in vaults I'd probably never see opened. Ghost 7 became my identity in the field. The asset who could go anywhere, become anyone, gather intelligence others couldn't touch. I operated alone mostly, sometimes with small teams of similarly invisible warriors. We were the tip of a spear no one admitted existed. The mission that would eventually blow my cover happened in Syria, 2021. ISIS had splintered but not disappeared, and intelligence indicated a major attack was being planned against American forces. Traditional surveillance had failed to penetrate their operational security. They needed someone on the inside. I spent 2 months building my legend as Amira, a Jordanian nurse displaced by the conflict. My medical training was basic but sufficient, and my Arabic was flawless. Slowly, carefully, I worked my way into the orbit of the cell planning the attack. The intelligence was worse than we'd thought. They had inside information about patrol routes, guard rotations, even the names of interpreters' families. Someone in the American forces was feeding them information. The attack would be a massacre unless stopped. But stopping it meant exposing myself. There was no way to extract the intelligence without burning my cover. I made the call that every operator dreads, mission before self. The raid I called and saved 32 American soldiers, including First Lieutenant Marcus Thompson Jr., son of the base commander. But it also meant Amira the nurse had to disappear in a way that wouldn't compromise other operations. I staged my own death, complete with witnesses and physical evidence, then extracted through channels that don't officially exist. The after-action report credited intelligence assets with preventing the massacre. My name appeared nowhere, as always. But Marcus Thompson Jr. knew someone had saved his life. His father, then Colonel Thompson, made it his mission to find out who. 3 years later, now Lieutenant General Thompson, he finally got clearance to review the classified files. He saw my operational photo, learned my call sign, understood what I'd sacrificed to save his son. He also learned I was still serving, still invisible, still protecting America from shadows. Which brings us to today. Fort Hood, Texas. My brother Miguel's promotion ceremony to Sergeant Major, the highest enlisted rank, a culmination of his conventional service that my family worshipped. I'd managed to avoid most family events over the years, but missing this would have raised questions my cover couldn't answer. So I stood in my dress blues, the ones I was actually entitled to wear, though my family didn't know that, and endured another round of Rivera family disappointment. "I still can't believe you kept that uniform," Carmen said during the reception. "Isn't it embarrassing? Wearing it when you couldn't even finish basic?" "It reminds me of who I tried to be," I said truthfully. "And failed to be," Miguel added, not unkindly but with the casual cruelty of a decade's assumption. "But hey, at least you're here. That's what matters." "Right," I agreed. "Being here is what matters." My mother circulated through the crowd, making sure everyone knew both her successful military children, carefully omitting mention of the middle child unless directly asked. When cornered, she'd say, "Isabella works in security," and quickly change the subject. My father held court near the stage, regaling younger NCOs with war stories and basking in reflected glory from Miguel's achievement. He caught my eye once, and his expression shifted to something between pity and resignation before he turned away. "Must be hard," a voice said beside me. I turned to find a young specialist, probably fresh from AIT. "Being around all this when you couldn't, couldn't make it through basic?" I supplied. "Yes, it's challenging. My older brother washed out too," she confided. "The family never let him forget it. But he's doing okay now. Runs a landscaping business. Found his own way." "Good for him," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Sometimes the path we plan isn't the path we need." She smiled and moved on, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of a decade's deception. The ceremony began with the usual pomp. Colors presented, national anthem, invocation. Miguel stood at attention with the other promotes, the picture of military bearing our father had always wanted in his children. I felt a genuine surge of pride for him. His path might be conventional, but he'd walked it with honor. Then the announcer's voice changed tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest joining us today. Please welcome Lieutenant General Marcus Thompson, Deputy Commander of Joint Special Operations Command." My blood froze. Of all the generals in all the installations in all the world, it had to be him. The one person outside my command structure who could recognize me, who knew Ghost 7's real face. He took the podium with the easy confidence of a man used to command. His eyes swept the crowd, paused on the family section, and stopped dead on me. I saw the exact moment of recognition. His prepared remarks forgotten, he stared at me with a mixture of shock and something like awe. The silence stretched long enough that people began shifting uncomfortably. "Excuse me," he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of command. "But I need to acknowledge someone extraordinary in our audience today." My heart hammered. This was it. 10 years of cover blown in front of everyone who'd written me off. "Captain Isabella Rivera," he said clearly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Would you please stand?" The crowd turned, confused. My family's faces were studies in shock. "Captain? Isabella? Their failed daughter who washed out of basic?" I stood slowly, muscle memory bringing me to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Thompson continued, "you're looking at one of America's finest intelligence officers. A woman whose service record is so classified I can't tell you a tenth of what she's accomplished. What I can tell you is that 3 years ago, she saved my son's life and the lives of his entire platoon in Syria. The silence was deafening. I peripherally saw my father's mouth hanging open, my mother gripping her chair, Miguel frozen mid-breath. Ghost 7, the general said, and I saw several special operations personnel in the crowd straighten with recognition of the call sign. We've never met officially, but I've been hoping for the chance to thank you. May I? Protocol ward with a decade of invisibility. But the cover was blown. Might as well own it. Yes, sir, I said, my voice carrying despite the shock. He left the podium and walked directly to me, his aide scrambling to follow. When he reached me, he did something generals don't do, he saluted first. A superior officer saluting a junior, reversing protocol to show respect. I returned the salute crisply, and he extended his hand. My son is alive because of you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. 32 soldiers came home because you chose mission over self. I've read the classified reports. I know what it cost you. Just doing my job, sir, I managed. No, he corrected firmly. You did far more than your job. You disappeared into hell for 2 months, gathered intelligence no one else could get, and when extraction would have compromised the mission, you chose to burn your cover to save American lives. He turned to address the crowd, his hands still gripping mine. This officer has been serving in the shadows for a decade. No recognition, no public acknowledgement, no glory. Her family was told she failed basic training to protect her cover. She let everyone she loved think she was a washout while she conducted operations that saved countless lives. My mother's sob cut through the silence. I couldn't look at her, at any of them. 10 years of lies, even necessary ones, had weight. I'm going to do something unusual, General Thompson continued. Captain Rivera's service record is classified beyond my ability to fully disclose. But I can say this, she holds a Bronze Star with Valor, 2 meritorious service medals, and multiple intelligence commendations that will someday, when declassified, tell the story of a true American hero. He turned back to me. I can't pin those medals on you today, they're locked in a vault at the Pentagon. But I can do this. From his pocket, he pulled a challenge coin. Not just any coin, the JSOC commander's coin, given only to those who've contributed extraordinarily to special operations. This is overdue, he said, pressing it into my hand. Thank you for your service, Ghost 7. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you for saving my son. He stepped back, saluted again, and returned to the podium. Now, let's continue with our ceremony. Though I think Sergeant Major Rivera might have some competition for today's most impressive soldier. The ceremony resumed, but the energy had fundamentally shifted. I sat down, feeling the weight of every stare. My family hadn't moved, frozen in various states of shock. The rest of the ceremony blurred past. Miguel received his promotion, but the crowd's attention kept drifting to me. Special operations personnel gave subtle nods of recognition. Regular Army wondered who Ghost 7 was. My family sat in stunned silence. When it ended, I tried to escape quickly, but my father's voice stopped me. Isabella. Not Misha, not daughter. Isabella, like I was a stranger. We need to talk. The family gathered in a small conference room, parents, Carmen, Miguel, and me. The silence stretched until it snapped. 10 years, my mother whispered. 10 years of thinking you failed. 10 years of pitying you. 10 years of being ashamed, her voice broke. I'm sorry, I said simply. It was necessary. Necessary? My father's command voice, the one that had terrified privates for decades. Lying to your family was necessary? My cover. Fuck your cover. The profanity shocked everyone, my father never swore. You're telling me you've been some kind of spy for 10 years? That you've been in Syria, in combat, while we thought you were checking receipts at JCPenney? Dad. Captain, Miguel interrupted, his voice strange. He called you captain. That's an officer rank. You can't be an officer without a degree. Georgetown, I admitted. Finished online during deployments. Masters in International Relations from Johns Hopkins too. When? Carmen demanded. When did you have time for? Between operations. Used education benefits you didn't know I had. Operations, my father repeated. What kind of operations? The kind I can't discuss. Ever. The kind that don't exist. But you were in danger, my mother said. In Syria, he said. Syria? That's a war zone. Yes. You could have died. Yes. And we would have been told what? That our mall security guard daughter had an accident? I didn't answer. We all knew what they would have been told. Ghost 7, Miguel said suddenly. I've heard that call sign. In Iraq, there were rumors about a ghost who could get intelligence nobody else could. Who saved that convoy near Mosul? Who? His eyes widened. That was you? I can't confirm or deny, he finished. Jesus Christ, Bella. Do you know what people say about Ghost 7? You're like a legend. A myth. Some people don't even believe you exist. That's the point, I said quietly. My father stood abruptly, pacing to the window. How many times, he asked without turning. How many times were you deployed while we thought you were stocking shelves? 17 operations over 10 years. Various durations. Combat? Sometimes. Were you wounded? My mother's voice was tiny. I hesitated. Twice. Nothing major. Nothing major. Carmen laughed bitterly. Our sister was wounded in combat we didn't know she was in, and she calls it nothing major. Why? My father turned finally, and I saw tears on his face. Command Sergeant Major Diego Rivera, crying. Why couldn't you tell us? We're a military family. We understand operational security. Because you'd already decided who I was, I said, finding strength in truth. The weak one who couldn't handle basic. The failure who wasn't cut out for service. And that narrative protected my cover better than any legend we could have created. We would have kept the secret. Would you? I challenged. Could you have acted naturally, knowing your daughter was deploying to denied areas? Could you have maintained the lie at every family gathering, every military event, every casual conversation? Could you have called me a disappointment convincingly enough to fool everyone? The silence answered for them. I became what you expected, I continued. It hurt, but it kept me safe. Kept my operations safe. Kept the people I was protecting safe. But we mourned you, my mother whispered. We mourned the daughter we thought we'd lost to weakness. While I mourned the family I lost to necessity, I countered. You think this was easy? Sitting at Christmas dinner while you praised Carmen and Miguel, adding just enough disappointment about me to sell the story? Listening to you tell people your daughter couldn't hack it while I was preparing to infiltrate terrorist cells? Bella, Miguel started. Do you know what I wanted to tell you? When you made sergeant? I wanted to tell you I was proud. That your conventional service mattered just as much as my shadow work. But I couldn't, because disappointed sisters don't gush about their successful brothers' promotions. This is insane, Carmen said. Our whole family dynamic for the last decade has been a lie. The dynamic was real, I corrected. Your disappointment, your pity, your dismissal, all real. The only lie was the reason behind it. My father returned to his seat, suddenly looking older than his years. The Bronze Star, he said quietly. Tell me about it. I can't. Tell me something. Anything. Help me understand who my daughter really is. I considered carefully. Some details could be shared without compromising operations. There was a village, I said slowly. ISIS was using it as a staging ground, but there were civilians. Children. Traditional assault would have been a massacre. I spent 3 weeks embedded, mapping their positions, identifying the civilians. The night of the raid, I guided our forces through safe corridors I'd identified. No civilian casualties. Minimal friendly losses. Maximum enemy impact. You were inside an ISIS-controlled village for 3 weeks? My mother's face was pale. Someone had to be. Alone? Usually. Jesus, Miguel breathed. And we gave you shit about not being tough enough for basic. A knock interrupted us. General Thompson's aide appeared. Captain Rivera? The general would like a word before he leaves. I looked at my family. I have to go, my father said. But this conversation isn't over. I found General Thompson in the parking lot by his vehicle. He smiled when he saw me approach. I hope I didn't cause too much chaos, he said. Nothing that wasn't already there, sir. Just visible now. Like you. He studied me. You know, we've been discussing creating a new position. Liaison between conventional forces and special activities. Someone who understands both worlds. Sir? The job would be at the Pentagon. Still classified, but not covert. You could use your real name, where your rail rank, maybe even tell your family where you work. That's... I struggled for words. That's a desk job, sir. It's a vital position that could save lives by improving coordination between visible and invisible forces. And after 10 years in the shadows, maybe it's time you stepped into the light a bit. Can I think about it? Of course. My aide has the details. He paused. Your brother's a good soldier, by the way. The kind of NCO we need more of. Yes, sir. He is. Runs in the family, apparently. He smiled. Different paths, same destination. After he left, I stood in the Texas heat, processing. A decade of carefully constructed lies had crumbled in minutes. A potential future where I wouldn't have to lie stretched ahead. And behind me, a family trying to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the soldier I'd actually become. I returned to find them still in the conference room, now with additions, Miguel's wife, Carmen's husband, my aunts and uncles who'd been at the ceremony. The news had spread. There she is, Uncle Roberto said. The ghost soldier. Maria owes me $50. I always said there was more to you than mall security. T.O. 10 years, he continued. 10 years of family barbecues where we all felt sorry for you. Do you know how many times I almost offered you a job at my restaurant out of pity? I appreciate the thought. I offered to get her a job at the bank, Aunt Sophia added. Entry level, but with benefits. She turned me down flat. Because I had a job, I said. Just not one I could discuss. A job that required a master's degree, Carmen interjected. From Johns Hopkins. While I was so proud of my online MBA from University of Phoenix. Your achievements aren't diminished by mine, I said. We just served differently. You keep saying that, Miguel stood, agitation clear. But one of us served visibly, with honor everyone could see. The other served in shadows, lying to everyone who loved her. How is that equal? It's not about equality, I said. It's about necessity. You think I wanted to miss Dad's retirement ceremony because I was establishing cover in Yemen? You think I enjoyed skipping Carmen's wedding because I was running an asset in Beirut? You missed my wedding for a mission? Carmen's voice was small. I watched the live stream from a safe house in Turkey. Cried because you looked so beautiful and I couldn't be there. But you chose? I chose to serve in the way I was needed. Just like you chose conventional service. Just like Miguel chose to be the NCO soldiers could look up to. Different paths? Same destination, my father finished quietly. I used to say that to you kids when you were little. Before I got so rigid about what service looked like. The room settled into uncomfortable silence. 20-plus family members reconciling a decade of assumptions with newly revealed reality. So what happens now? My mother asked. Do you go back to pretending? Do we have to keep lying? I don't know, I admitted. My cover's blown here, but operational security still matters. I can't talk about most of what I've done. I might deploy again without warning. The mall security job stays as my official cover. But we'll know, she said. When you disappear, we'll know you're not at a security conference. You'll know I'm serving. That's all. That's enough, my father said firmly. That's more than we've had for 10 years. I have a question, Miguel's wife, Sarah, raised her hand tentatively. Sorry, this is all just a lot. But if you're a captain, where are you stationed? Technically? Fort Meade, Maryland. Actually? Wherever they need me. And the mall job? Is real. I work there between assignments. Helps maintain cover and gives me a reason for irregular schedules. That's. She paused, searching for words. That's kind of brilliant. It's exhausting, I corrected. Living two lives, being two people. Never able to fully relax into either identity. The job General Thompson mentioned, my father said suddenly. The Pentagon position. Are you considering it? I don't know. After 10 years of field work, a desk job feels like retirement. Or evolution, Carmen suggested. You can't operate in shadows forever. Why not? But even as I asked, I knew she was right. The weight of deception, the toll of constant vigilance, the loneliness of isolation, they accumulated like interest on a debt I'd never finish paying. Because you're tired, Miguel said simply. I can see it. We all can, now that we're really looking. You're exhausted, Bella. He was right. 10 years of hypervigilance, of never fully dropping my guard, of being Isabella the disappointment and Ghost 7 the operator but never just myself, it showed in ways I'd stopped noticing. Maybe, I admitted. Take the job, my mother said firmly. Come into the light. Let us know you, the real you. The real me might disappoint you in different ways. Then we'll be disappointed honestly, my father said. That's better than being proud of a lie. The gathering broke up slowly, family members approaching individually to express variations of shock, admiration, and confusion. Some wanted war stories I couldn't tell. Others just wanted to understand how they'd missed the signs for so long. There weren't signs to miss, I assured Aunt Maria. That was the point. As the conference room emptied, Miguel lingered. We stood together, two soldiers on very different paths. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all the times I called you weak. For the jokes about washing out. For. You didn't know. I should have questioned it. You were always the smartest of us. It should have seemed wrong that you couldn't handle basic. Or it proved how good I was at my job. He laughed bitterly. Yeah, I guess it did. A pause. That convoy near Mosul. The one Ghost 7 saved. My buddy Martinez was in that convoy. I said nothing. He's alive because of you. Has 3 kids now. Coaches Little League. I'm glad. Were you scared? I thought about that night, the intelligence indicating an ambush, the race to intercept, the 15 minutes of absolute chaos as we disrupted their attack. Terrified, I admitted. But fear's just information. You process it and move forward. They should teach that at basic. They do. Just not in those words. We stood in comfortable silence, 2 siblings finally seeing each other clearly. I'm proud of you, he said finally. Not for the secret soldier stuff, though that's incredible. But for carrying the weight alone for so long. That takes a different kind of strength. I'm proud of you too, I replied. You became the NCO soldiers need. The visible example of good leadership. That matters just as much as shadow work. Different paths? Same destination. We hugged, the first real embrace in a decade that wasn't performed for cover. The drive back to Austin gave me time to think. 10 years of carefully constructed deception lay in ruins behind me. An uncertain future stretched ahead. The weight of my family's new knowledge sat heavy on my shoulders, in some ways heavier than their disappointment had been. My phone rang through the car speakers. Sarah Kim, my handler and the woman who'd recruited me all those years ago. Heard you had an interesting day, she said without preamble. News travels fast. When a 3-star general outs one of our operators at a public ceremony, people notice. How bad is the exposure? Contained to family and Fort Hood personnel. No operational details revealed. And the family? Processing. Confused. Hurt. But maybe healing? Thompson's job offer is real, by the way. Came through official channels this afternoon. I know. You're considering it. Not a question. Sarah knew me too well. I'm tired, I admitted. 10 years is a long time to be invisible. It is, she agreed. You've given more than most ever will. Maybe it's time to serve differently. Maybe. For what it's worth, I think you'd be excellent at the liaison position. You understand both worlds in ways few do. Thanks. And Isabella? What you did today, letting the truth out, that took a different kind of courage. I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I drove in silence through the Texas Hill Country. The mall security uniform hung in my apartment, waiting for Monday's shift. The classified phone that connected me to operations sat in my glove compartment. 2 lives, still running parallel, but no longer hidden from the people who mattered most. That evening, my encrypted phone buzzed with a message. New intelligence suggested movement in a cell we'd been tracking in Somalia. My expertise was requested for analysis, possible deployment within 72 hours. I stared at the message, feeling the familiar pull of operational necessity. Lives hung in the balance. Intelligence I'd developed over years could make the difference. This was what I'd trained for, sacrificed for, lied for. My regular phone chimed. A text from my mother, family dinner Sunday. No uniforms, no ranks, just us. Please come. 2 messages. 2 lives. 2 paths forward. I picked up the encrypted phone to respond, then hesitated. 10 years of reflex ward with new possibilities. I thought about General Thompson's offer, about my family's tentative acceptance, about the exhaustion Miguel had seen so clearly. Finally, I typed, recommend Agent Watkins for Somalia operation. Similar expertise, fresher perspective. Will provide full briefing on my networks and assets. Sarah's response was immediate, understood. The Pentagon job? I'll take it. Good choice. When do you start? I looked at the family dinner invitation again. After Sunday dinner. That Sunday, I drove to El Paso with no cover story prepared. Just myself, complicated and tired and real. The house looked the same, immaculate military housing with my father's perfectly maintained lawn and my mother's prize roses. But everything felt different. They'd all gathered, immediate family only, by some unspoken agreement. No uniforms, as requested, though Miguel wore an army t-shirt and Carmen had her unit pin on her collar. Old habits died hard. I made your favorite, my mother said by way of greeting. Mole Negro. From scratch. You haven't made that in years. You haven't been home in years. Not really. The dinner started awkwardly, everyone trying to navigate this new reality. Carmen asked about Georgetown. How had I managed coursework during deployments? Miguel wanted to understand the intelligence process without crossing into classified territory. My parents struggled between pride and lingering hurt. I have something to tell you, I said during dessert. I've accepted a position at the Pentagon. Starting next month. The liaison job, my father asked. Yes. I'll be working to improve coordination between conventional and special operations forces. So no more. My mother gestured vaguely. Shadow work? Less shadow, more desk. Though I'll still have classified responsibilities. But you'll have an address we can visit? Carmen asked. A phone number that actually reaches you? Yes. Thank God, Miguel said. Do you know how weird it's been, Googling Ghost 7 and finding nothing but rumors and denial? That's literally the point, I laughed. Still weird. As the evening progressed, we found a rhythm. Not the old one, that was gone forever. But something new, built on truth rather than assumptions. My father asked about the Pentagon position with genuine interest. My mother fussed about apartment hunting in D.C. Carmen offered to help decorate. Miguel threatened to visit and eat all my food. I owe you all an apology, I said as we cleared dishes. I let you believe the worst about me. That wasn't fair. We owe you one too, my father countered. We were so rigid about what service looked like, we couldn't see you were serving. Just differently. Invisibly, my mother added. Though I still don't fully understand why it had to be that way. Because visible operators are targets, I explained. Their families become leverage. The enemy can't hurt what they can't find. And we couldn't be trusted to keep the secret? Carmen asked. Could you have? I challenged gently. Could you have maintained perfect operational security at every family gathering, every social event, every casual conversation for 10 years? She considered, then shook her head. Probably not. I would have been too proud to hide it perfectly. Exactly. So what do we do now? Miguel asked. How do we be a family when part of your life will always be classified? We be honest about what we can share and respectful of what we can't, I suggested. We stop making assumptions. We accept that service comes in many forms. Different paths, my father said quietly. Same destination, we all finished together. Later, my parents walked me to my car. The evening had gone better than I dared hope, but there was still distance to bridge, hurt to heal. Will you really visit? My mother asked. When you're in D.C.? I'll try. The job will have regular hours, mostly. More stability than I've had in years. Good, my father said firmly. Because we have 10 years of missed conversations to make up for. Dad. I know it won't be easy, he continued. I know we can't just pretend the last decade didn't happen. But we can do better going forward. We can learn who you really are, not who we assumed you were. I'd like that. My mother hugged me, real and fierce. Be safe, she whispered. Even at a desk job, be safe. Always am. Liar, she said, but with affection. You've been lying to us for so long, I don't know if you remember how to tell the truth. I'm learning, I admitted. We all are. The drive back to Austin felt different. Lighter. The weight of deception had lifted, replaced by something more complex but ultimately healthier. My phone rang, the regular one, not the encrypted line. So, Carmen said without greeting, I've been thinking about what you said. About different paths. Yeah? I've been considering civilian transition. Maybe using my logistics experience in disaster relief or humanitarian work. That's amazing, Carmen. You inspired it. The whole shadow service thing. It made me realize there are ways to serve beyond the uniform. Dad will have opinions. Dad's learning to expand his definitions, she countered. Thanks to you. After we hung up, I smiled. Change rippled outward like waves from a stone dropped in still water. My apartment in Austin looked the same as sparse, functional, designed for someone who was rarely home. But I saw it differently now. Temporary. A way station between who I'd been and who I was becoming. I pulled out the Pentagon job offer, reading through the position details. Strategic Liaison, Special Operations Integration Division. It sounded bureaucratic, but the underlying mission was vital, bridging the gap between conventional forces and shadow operations. Preventing the kind of intelligence failures that cost lives. Building understanding between visible and invisible service. My encrypted phone buzzed. Updates from Somalia. The operation I'd passed to Agent Watkins was proceeding well. My networks remained intact, my assets protected. The mission continued without me. And that was okay. I opened my laptop and began typing. After action report, Operation Family Reunion Classification, personal date, redacted, operative, Ghost 7/Captain Isabella Rivera. Mission objective, maintain operational cover while preserving family relationships. Mission status, objective failed successfully. Analysis, 10-year operation to protect family from operational exposure compromised by unforeseen recognition. Initial assessment suggested critical failure. However, post-action analysis indicates strategic success through tactical failure. Family relationships, while damaged by necessary deception, show signs of recovery. Operational security maintained at acceptable levels. Future operations will proceed under modified parameters. Lessons learned. No cover survives first contact with a 3-star general who owes you his son's life. Family disappointment, while painful, provides excellent operational cover. The truth, carefully managed, can be more powerful than any deception. Different paths can lead to the same destination. Even ghosts need to come home eventually. Recommendation, accept Pentagon position. Transition from shadow operations to strategic integration. Serve visibly while honoring invisible service. Personal note, 10 years ago, Specialist Sarah Kim asked if I could live with my family's disappointment. I've learned the better question is whether you can live with the distance deception creates. The answer, ultimately, is no. Not forever. Not if you want to remain human rather than just operational. End report. I saved the file in a personal folder, my own record of a mission that had lasted a decade and ended with a general's unexpected recognition. The mall security uniform hung in my closet. I'd need it for 3 more weeks, maintaining cover until the Pentagon position officially started. But now it was just costume rather than identity. A remnant of who I'd been while becoming who I was. My phone chimed. Miguel, hey, ghost sister. Mom wants to know if you prefer Arlington or Alexandria for apartment hunting. Also, I'm totally visiting and eating all your food. I typed back, Alexandria. Better food scene for when you mooch. Deal. Proud of you, Bella. For all of it. Proud of you too, Sergeant Major. Your promotion was well earned. Different paths? Same destination. I set the phone aside and looked around my sparse apartment one more time. In a month, I'd be in D.C., wearing my real rank, using my real name, serving visibly for the first time in a decade. The shadow work would continue, someone else would be Ghost 7 or 8 or 9, protecting America from threats we couldn't acknowledge. But my war in the shadows was ending. Time to come home. Time to be seen. Time to bridge the gap between the soldier my family had wanted me to be and the one I'd actually become. Different paths. Same destination. Same honor. Just visible, finally, to the people who mattered most. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of transition. Closing out intelligence networks, briefing replacements, ensuring my assets would be protected under new handlers. Each handoff was bittersweet. These people had trusted Ghost 7 with their lives, and now I was entrusting them to others. You're really leaving? Ahmad, one of my longest-standing assets, asked over encrypted communications. Moving to a different role. You'll be in good hands. It won't be the same. You understood the culture, the language, the subtleties others miss. Agent Watkins is excellent. Give her a chance. If you say so, Ghost. And, thank you. For everything. Similar conversations played out across my network. 10 years of relationships built on trust and necessity, now carefully transferred to ensure continuity. Lives hung in the balance of these transitions. My final shift at the mall was surreal. Checking receipts and walking perimeters while knowing it was the last time I'd wear this particular mask. My supervisor, Janet, who'd been unfailingly kind to someone she thought was a struggling veteran, nearly cried when I gave notice. DC, huh, she said. Good for you, Isabella. I always knew you were meant for more than this. If only she knew. I handed over my uniform and badge, keeping only the nameplate as a reminder. Isabella Rivera, security. Not captain. Not Ghost 7. Just a woman doing a job that provided perfect cover for a very different life. The movers came for what little I owned worth taking. Most of my possessions were props, but a few held meaning. The books in various languages. The chess set an asset had carved for me in Kabul. Photos carefully edited to remove classified details but preserve memories. My family insisted on helping with the move. Watching my father and Miguel load boxes while Carmen and my mother debated apartment layouts was surreal. A year ago, they'd pitted me for needing their help. Now they knew the truth but helped anyway, perhaps because of it. This place is depressing, Carmen announced, surveying my sparse apartment. Please tell me you'll get actual furniture in DC. I had furniture. It served its purpose. A mattress on the floor and a card table don't count as furniture. They do if you're rarely home. Well, you'll be home more now, my mother interjected. A real home. With a couch and art on the walls and maybe even curtains. Curtains are a security risk, I said automatically, then caught myself. Old habits. Which we're breaking, she said firmly. Starting with curtains. The drive to DC became a convoy, my car, Miguel's truck with my belongings, my parents' SUV. A family migration to install their formerly invisible daughter in her newly visible life. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like coming home after a very long deployment. The apartment in Alexandria was everything my Austin place hadn't been, actual rooms instead of a studio, windows that got natural light, a kitchen meant for more than coffee and MREs. My family attacked it like a mission, assembling furniture and hanging pictures with military precision. Where's this from? Miguel held up a photo, carefully cropped but showing me in local dress at a market. Jordan, I said, then caught myself again. I mean, somewhere that looked like Jordan. You can say Jordan, he laughed. I'm not going to sell state secrets. Old habits, I repeated. We've got time to break them, my father said, mounting curtain rods despite my protests about sightlines and escape routes. That evening, we sat on my new couch. Carmen had insisted on something worthy of a Pentagon officer, eating takeout and tentatively building new patterns. They asked questions I could answer. What languages did I speak? 7 fluently, 3 more functionally. Had I worked with other agencies? All of them, at various times. Was the Pentagon job really safer? Mostly, probably, hopefully. I still can't believe you're Ghost 7, Miguel said for the 100th time. Do you know how many times that call sign came up in intelligence briefings? Always attached to something impossible that somehow happened. Not impossible. Just difficult. Classified for impossible, Carmen translated. We're learning your language. After they left for their hotel, I stood in my new apartment, my real apartment, under my real name, where my real family could visit. It felt foreign after so many years of temporary spaces and false identities. My secure phone buzzed. Sarah Kim. Settling in? Trying to. Apparently I need curtains. The horror. Ready for tomorrow? Tomorrow. First day at the Pentagon. First day as myself. As ready as someone can be for bureaucracy after a decade in the field. You'll be surprised. The work matters just as much, just differently. Different paths? Same destination, she confirmed. By the way, Watkins handled Somalia beautifully. Your network's held. Good. No regrets? I looked around my apartment, furnished by family who finally knew me, in a city where I could use my real name, preparing for a job that would let me serve visibly. No regrets, I said, and meant it. The Pentagon was exactly as imposing as every movie suggested. But walking through security with a badge that said Captain Rivera instead of an alias felt revolutionary. No cover story, no rehearsed background, just myself. The strategic liaison office was small but actual, windows, walls, a door that locked. After years of working from safe houses and borrowed spaces, having a designated desk felt luxurious and confining in equal measure. Captain Rivera? A colonel appeared in my doorway. I'm Jim Patterson, Division Chief. Heard a lot about you. Hopefully some of it was good, sir. All of it was classified, he said with a grin. But reading between the redactions, pretty impressive. Ready to help us bridge the gap? Yes, sir. Good. First briefings in an hour. We've got conventional forces who don't understand why special operations won't share intelligence, and special operations who think conventional forces can't handle nuance. You get to translate. Sounds familiar. I bet it does. The briefing was a masterclass in miscommunication. Army intelligence officers frustrated by special operations secrecy. Special operations frustrated by conventional forces' inability to protect sensitive sources. Both sides talking past each other in languages that sounded similar but meant different things. The problem, I said when asked for input, is that you're having the wrong conversation. This isn't about sharing intelligence. It's about understanding why intelligence exists in the first place. Meaning, a major challenged. Conventional intelligence serves conventional operations, large-scale, visible, attributable actions. Special operations intelligence serves shadow work, small-scale, invisible, deniable actions. They're not better or worse, just different tools for different jobs. So how do we share between them? By understanding what each side actually needs versus what they think they want. Conventional forces think they want raw intelligence. What they actually need is actionable interpretation. Special operations thinks conventional forces will compromise sources. What they actually need is assurance that information will be protected. The room digested this. You're saying we need a translator, the colonel summarized. You have one, I gestured to myself. That's why I'm here. The days settled into rhythm. Meetings, briefings, translation between worlds I'd inhabited separately. Using my experience to build bridges instead of walls. It was cerebral rather than physical, strategic rather than tactical, but it mattered. You're good at this, Patterson observed after a particularly successful joint planning session. Better than I expected from someone with your operational background. 10 years of being two people gives you practice in translation, sir. I suppose it does. Evenings were the strangest adjustment. No operations to plan, no assets to run, no covers to maintain. Just life. Normal, visible, acknowledged life. I joined a gym where I could use my real name. Bought groceries without calculating sightlines. Even attempted dating, though explaining a decade-long gap in my civilian resume proved challenging. So you were in the military? Mark, an accountant from Arlington, asked over coffee. Something like that. But not anymore? Still serving, just differently. Oh, like reserves? Sure, I agreed, because explaining the truth would violate about 17 security protocols. There wasn't a second date. My family visited monthly, still adjusting to having full access to my life. Carmen helped decorate, firmly overriding my protests about maintaining mobility-friendly spaces. Miguel used my guest room as a crash pad when visiting DC, filling my refrigerator with beer in my evenings with increasingly accurate guesses about my classified adventures. Somalia, 2019, he said one evening. Had to be you. The intelligence was too good, too specific. No comment. That's basically confirmation. No, it's literally no comment. Same thing in our family. My parents were harder. They struggled between pride in what I'd accomplished and grief for what we'd missed. Every visit included at least one moment where my mother would tear up over some random reminder of the decade we'd lost. I saved all your security company newsletters, she confessed once, showing me a folder of generic corporate communications from my cover employer. I thought maybe if I read them, I'd understand your life better. Mom. I know they're meaningless. But they were all I had. They weren't meaningless. They were part of the cover that kept me safe. I'd rather have had you in danger and known about it than safe and lost to us. No, I said gently. You wouldn't. Trust me. The Pentagon job evolved as I found my footing. Translation became education. Education became integration. Slowly, painfully, conventional and special operations began understanding each other better. Not perfect harmony, that was impossible with such different missions. But functional cooperation, which was more than they'd had before. Rivera's rules, they started calling my guidelines for information sharing. Simple principles that seemed obvious once stated: verify need versus want. Protect sources ruthlessly. Share outcomes, not methods. Trust but verify. Different paths, same destination. You should write a manual, General Thompson suggested during one of his visits. He'd become an informal mentor, checking in periodically. Your perspective is unique. Manuals leave traces, sir. Some knowledge is better transferred personally. Spoken like a true ghost. Former ghost, I corrected. Once a ghost, always a ghost. You just wear it differently now. He was right. The instincts remained. I still catalogued exits, noticed watchers, maintained situational awareness that a decade of training had hardened into reflex. But now I did it openly, as Captain Rivera rather than Ghost 7. 6 months into the Pentagon position, I received an unexpected visit. Ahmad, my former asset from Jordan, sat in a Georgetown cafe where we'd arranged to meet. He looked older, grayer, but intact. Ghost, he greeted me warmly. Or should I say Captain? Isabella is fine. How did you find me? Please. You trained me better than that. He smiled. I wanted to thank you properly. My family is safe because of you. My children have futures because of you. You risked everything to provide intelligence. I just facilitated. No. You understood. You saw us as people, not just sources. That made all the difference. We talked for an hour, carefully, always aware of security, but honestly. He showed me pictures of his children, now in college in Europe. I told him about my new role, building bridges between worlds. Different but the same, he observed. Still protecting people, just visibly now. Trying to. Succeeding, he corrected. As always. After he left, I sat in the cafe processing. 10 years of shadow work had mattered in ways I'd never fully see. Lives saved, threats prevented, families intact because of intelligence gathered in dark places. The Pentagon job mattered too, just differently. Visibly. Accountably. My phone buzzed. Miguel, family dinner Sunday. Mom's making tamales. You're coming, right? I typed back, wouldn't miss it. Good. Also, I've got a friend deploying soon. Intel guy. Mentioned your name came up in his briefings. Oh. Something about Rivera's rules being mandatory reading now. I smiled. Different paths, same destination. The shadow work continued, just with better coordination. Others would be Ghost 8, 9, 10, protecting America from threats we couldn't acknowledge. But they'd do it with better support, clearer communication, bridges between their world and the conventional forces they protected. My war in the shadows was over. My service in the light had begun. Both mattered. Both cost. Both served the same ultimate purpose, keeping people safe, whether they knew it or not. That Sunday, surrounded by family who finally knew me, eating tamales and arguing about football, I felt something I hadn't in a decade, whole. Not perfect, the scars remained, trust was still rebuilding, stories still couldn't be told. But whole nonetheless. I'm proud of you, Mija, my father said quietly while we did dishes. Not for the medals or the rank or the classified stuff I'll never understand. But for coming back to us. For letting us see you. I'm still the same person who washed out of basic, I reminded him. No, he corrected. You're the person who was strong enough to let us believe that for 10 years. That's a different kind of courage. Different paths? I suggested. Same destination, he confirmed. Family. As I drove back to Alexandria that night, I thought about paths and destinations. About service visible and invisible. About the price of deception and the cost of truth. About families that break and heal and evolve. My name is Captain Isabella Rivera. I served in shadows as Ghost 7, protecting America from threats that don't make headlines. Now I serve in light, building bridges between warriors who fight differently but for the same cause. Both matter. Both have costs. Both brought me here, to a life where I can finally be myself, complicated and scarred and whole. The highway stretched ahead, leading back to my real apartment in my real life with my real name. No covers to maintain, no lies to track, no disappointments to perform. Just me, serving visibly, loving honestly, living authentically. Different path than expected. Perfect destination anyway. And that's my story, how a decade of being the family failure led to a moment of revelation that changed everything. How shadow service and visible service are equally valuable. How families can survive necessary deceptions and grow stronger for the breaking. If you've ever served in silence, if you've ever sacrificed recognition for mission, if you've ever had to choose between truth and necessity, I see you. Your service matters, whether anyone knows about it or not. Drop a comment below sharing your own story of invisible service or family revelation. Where are you watching from? What paths have you taken that others didn't understand? And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the family disappointment who was secretly extraordinary, or if you're still serving in shadows waiting for your moment in the light, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps these stories reach others who need to hear that service comes in many forms, and sometimes the most powerful contributions are the ones no one sees. Thank you for listening to my journey from Ghost 7 to Captain Rivera. Remember, different paths can lead to the same destination, and sometimes the greatest honor is in the service no one applauds. Until next time, stay strong, serve well, and remember, even ghosts deserve to come home.